Were you told before going out for your match that Owen Hart had passed away, or did you already know?
Well, I was standing in the gorilla station because I was up next, and I watched it, and it didn't look real. I mean, it just didn't seem like that could be real.
Ken Shamrock, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for taking the time out to come on. So I really wanted to ask you, with Mike Tyson making his comeback to boxing or announcing his return to boxing, has that motivated you to potentially make a return to fighting yourself?
Well, I don't need any motivation to do that. I'm always hungry to fight. That's in my DNA. I love doing it. I've always loved doing it. So it's, but at the same time, I also got to be smart too and understand that, it has to be something that makes sense. If I was going to get in the ring, I'm not going to fight some 27-year-old in his prime, which would be, ridiculous for me to do that. But if something made sense, I would do it because, I love it. I love competing. I've always loved competing. Someone like Mike Tyson would be a perfect fight for me because it's something that I love doing. I love competing, and I love competing against the best. So a perfect scenario for me.
You and Mike Tyson actually have some similarities when it comes to pro wrestling. At WrestleMania 14, he was the special enforcer in the main event against Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels. But the year before, WrestleMania 13, you were the special guest referee in one of what is known as one of the greatest matches of all time, let alone one of the greatest WrestleMania matches, Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin, a submission match. How did that whole thing come about with you making that transition from the UFC and MMA into pro wrestling?
Yeah, well, I think MMA was in a bad spot at the time. It went from no holds barred into MMA. Um, Bob Meyerowitz was constantly fighting in court with getting it sanctioned and regulated in different states or cities. He was losing money, constantly paying for lawyers and legal fees, and it just kind of ran the company into the ground. And they weren't able to pay the fighters what they needed to be able to make a living. And that's kind of what happened. Was I think that they just kind of ran into a wall. They weren't able to pay the fighters, or at least me, what I needed to be able to support my Lions Den, my family, and the life I had grown accustomed to. So I had to look elsewhere, and pro wrestling seemed like a great place to go to be able to continue developing my skills in the ring and being able to keep practicing the submission skills I had learned, during that time. As my professional career had gotten better and better, I became much more efficient at submissions. And to be able to go into pro wrestling and be able to uh, do those same kind of moves and holds in pro wrestling, it kept me in shape, and it kept me hungry, and it kept me focused to keep competing in that arena and to be able to um, kind of find the right niche to become very good at pro wrestling. It's something that just doesn't come easy. I had to really work at it. And I thought towards the end there, I really got to a point to where I could put on great matches.
So, were you approached by the WWF at the time, now WWE, or did you approach them about coming into the pro wrestling business?
I started reaching out to all kinds of different pro wrestling organizations over in Japan, WCW, WWF, and I got an immediate response back from Vince, who personally called me, and we talked on the phone. And 3 days later, I'm in well, I don't remember where it was at, but I was at a Monday Night Raw, sitting in the front row, talking smack to Farouk 3 days after I got done talking to Vince. So he worked very quickly on bringing me in. He had an idea, as MMA was becoming very popular, and me being the world's most dangerous man, he saw a great opportunity with me in pro wrestling.
So, how difficult was that transition from the MMA world to the pro wrestling world for you?
Yeah, it was tough. I think that there was a lot of different scenarios that played out that most people didn't see. And one of them, which I thought was a difficult one, was me going from this world of no holds barred, tough guys, no nonsense, into this world where it was entertainment. guys pretending to be tough, guys pretending to do things and selling and acting like they're hurt, and basically an actor and a stuntman rolled up into one. And it was difficult because I was fighting um, two different scenarios. One of them where people thought I was selling out, like I was going and I was doing this thing, and it was an embarrassment to the sport and to the people I trained and to the people that were involved with me and to the whole organization of No Holds Barred and MMA. So I was fighting that. But then there was that other side where people were like, "No, dude, this is going to get great exposure." And there was very, very minimal people at that time that were in a positive thought about it. But I took that chance, and um, it could have went very badly for me if I didn't make it, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it would have failed, because people would have looked at me very differently, like I was a sellout, no good, a poser, all the things that I would have had to deal with if I didn't make it. But fortunately for me, as I made it, I was able to make the world of fighting more popular through pro wrestling. It got a whole lot more exposure. It got a lot more notice, a lot of media attention and mainstream because of where I came from. It drew a lot of eyes to people wanting to know where I came from and what I used to do. And it made the UFC what it is today because of the eyes that it got on it by me going mainstream into that pro wrestling organization, being on TV twice a week, people talking about where I came from, fighting in the UFC, bare knuckle fighting, anything goes. That character I brought into the wrestling world in the WWF, people were able to kind of, and they find out where you come from and what you used to do. And that drew a lot of eyes to mixed martial arts.
D'Lo Brown said that you started that trend, the crossover from MMA to pro wrestling, and even pro wrestling to MMA. At that time, did you realize that you were doing that, that you were at the forefront of that?
Well, I don't think so. I think at the time I was just trying to pay my bills and find another place for me to compete at where I could make the money I needed to make and be happy doing it. And so when I did it, that's why I did it. But at the same time, I also understood very early on the political landscape that started to develop after I got into pro wrestling, of people talking down and hating on me and calling me a sellout and it's fake and I don't know why you're doing out there pretending and playing like a little child. And then there was that other side where the media picked up on it, and they were like, wow, here's this guy that does this, but he's doing this and he's having a lot of success at it. So it was very fortunate it turned out the way it did, because it could have turned out so much more worse. But it turned out well, and I'm very happy it did, because I think it did make me as a person, and I became much more famous and much more recognizable through pro wrestling. And I believe it also made MMA and No Holds Barred. Uh, it gave it more exposure and made it more famous and more popular for people to want to know what that was, where it was that I came from.
Were you trained by someone on how to be a pro wrestler, or was it all on the job training?
No, I'd actually done a little bit of it early on. I was known as Vince Torelli, Mr. Wrestling, Vince Torelli. I was in the North Carolinas. I did 2.5 years of pro wrestling before I became a mixed martial arts fighter. So when I went into the pro wrestling, decided I was going to make that change from the fighting into there, I had an understanding, but not to the level of what these guys were in the WWF. I'd never been at that level. So for me, it was really all new, and I had to develop very quickly and have an understanding of how things worked at that level. And so it was a crash course for me. First 6 months going in there, I had a crash course on how to do things and what was right and what was wrong.
So you've been a part of a lot of important moments in pro wrestling. And, that match that we talked about at WrestleMania 13. I mean, your program with The Rock, and one night especially, May 23rd, 1999. It was WWF Over the Edge pay-per-view. It was the night, unfortunately, that Owen Hart died, and you were scheduled in a 8-man tag match, which you went out after the fact. What do you remember from that night?
Not much, man. I don't remember the match. All I remember was seeing Owen being wheeled out on the cart. And the thought was, is it real? You know, is this real or is this part of a program? It seemed real, but as you know, in the WWF, there are things that people can make you believe that aren't really happening. So there's always a question: is it or isn't it real? And I think that's what was happening in the moment at that time. Was we were waiting for him to pop up off the gurney and say, laugh at us and say, "I got you," um, and they wheeled him into the ambulance and they took off. And I think everybody for a while was just trying to figure out when they were going to say, okay, we're just playing. Uh, but it never happened. And I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks um, after we had done a few shows that it really set into the fans and to the wrestlers that this was real, like he wasn't coming back. But it was, like I said, it was a slow process for us to really grasp what had happened. It was hard to gather and understand in the moment when it was happening, and then after the moment, because what we lived in was entertainment, and that everything was going to be okay. He was going to just be, he's going to pop up somewhere, and there he'll be back. But it never happened. So it was hard for everyone to realize the reality of that situation.
Were you told before going out for your match that Owen Hart had passed away, or did you already know?
Well, I was standing in the gorilla station because I was up next, and I watched it, and it didn't look real. I mean, it just didn't seem like that could be real. Like, you don't get up on that thing like that and you just fall. It just doesn't happen. But it did. So it didn't look real. It did not look real. It looked like, there was a gimmick, and it looked like some sort of stuffed doll when it hit the pole. It did not look real. But of course, we don't ever get to see things like that, right? We don't see the stuff actually happen in real time. So to see how a body and how a situation like that really happens, it's hard for your mind to wrap around and see the reality of that being real. You're just not used to it. I wasn't used to it.
Do you or did you agree with the WWF continuing with that show that night?
Above my pay grade. That's not a position that I even pretend to know what was right and what was wrong. I think you can make a case for both. Knowing Owen, uh, I would think that he would say, "No, man, keep going." It's like, why are you stopping, man? But at the same time, I also can see how you would want to have the parents have a moment to be able to reflect and have a time to catch up, and not see people in there hitting and punching and kicking and slamming and being heels and being baby faces in a tragic moment like that. You would think, like, let's take a moment to let the reality set in on what just happened. So yeah, so I could see both sides. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they chose to go that way, and I thought everybody handled it perfectly. Everybody did their job, and we moved on.
How close were you with Owen?
Well, I mean, we weren't like best friends, but I mean, I was at his house. We worked out together. We had trained with the dungeon match. I did my first program. Stayed in Canada for a while. Worked out with his brother Brett. So I was with Stu for his birthday. So it wasn't the best of best, but yeah, I knew him. I knew him pretty well.
So now, fast forward 20 years later, Ken, that was in 99. You're with Impact Wrestling now. And I want to bring up a quote that you said. The night before you returned to pro wrestling, you said, "I'm not here to be good. I'm here to be great. I won't stop until I'm the best." At your age and everything that you've accomplished and proving that you were the best at one point in your life, why take this journey again and go after that?
Well, I would actually say, why not? I mean, like, we only live one time, man. You got one life to live. And it's a shame if you don't live it till its fullest. Like, I mean, take every moment, every second, every opportunity, every chance, and make the best of it. And I felt like I got an opportunity and a chance to get back into wrestling. I feel good. My body feels good. I feel like I could do all the things I needed to do when I was young, hurricanranas, suicide dives, show stoppers. I mean, you name it, I can do it. And so why wouldn't I try to do something nobody else has done, or at least very few people have done, and go out and challenge myself? And because if you know who I am and you understand who I am, and I think I've pretty much shown people who I am, uh, I'm a competitor. I love to challenge myself. I don't do it for the money, although that's part of it. But it's all about who I am and my DNA. I'm not going to stop being me. I don't understand how people want you to go, well, you turned 60, so you should stop doing sports now. When you've done it your whole life since you were 10 years old, and now they're saying because you're older, you can't do it anymore. Why? That's not fair. What if you can? What if you can even do it at 60% instead of 100%? Does that mean you should stop, even though that's your joy? That's what you enjoy in life? You're supposed to just stop? I don't understand it. I don't understand the necessity for people to want you to retire because they feel bad for you or because they don't want you to get hurt, when it's something that you have enjoyed your whole life and you continue to keep enjoying it. But yet they can't seem to understand that. Like, this is a joy. It's not work. It's not something that you have to get up every day and regret. It's something that you literally, like most people get up and go fishing or hunting. They enjoy that. It's what they do. And that's the same thing with me when it comes to competing and wrestling and doing the things that we're doing. Even fighting is, I enjoy it. It's not something I force myself to do.
So what's your goal? What are your goals right now in pro wrestling? Like I said, you've done it all, but right now, in the current moment, what are your goals?
Yeah, I want to be world champion. I want to be world champion again. And I want to keep doing it. And I want to keep focusing on being the best. I want to be able to walk into that ring and be 70 or 80 years old and people's jaws to hit the floor, just going, oh my gosh. I saw a guy get in the ring in Impact Wrestling, and I forget who he worked against. But the guy must have been 70 or 80 years old, and he's walking along the top rope.
Mike Johnson.
Yeah, he had a singlet on. And I just looked at that and I said, see, that's what it's about. That's what it's about, right? It's about living life and enjoying yourself and having the fans enjoy what you're doing. That's what it's about. It's not about putting these barriers up on people because they turned a certain age and all of a sudden you say, okay, you're done. If they can still go and they can still have fun doing it, why not?
I believe that every single person is put on this world for a certain purpose. Have you found your purpose and have you achieved what you wanted to in this life?
No, I found my purpose, but I don't believe that I've even scratched the surface on what my purpose is. And I believe my purpose is to be able to help other people live their dreams, find their dreams, and help other people achieve their goals. Whether it's financially, helping people out financially, or helping people find the motivation or the desire in things that they want to do, helping at-risk kids be able to find something they can latch on to help make their lives, like my life was better because I found something I love doing. Therefore, I stayed out of trouble. So it's helping those younger kids find something that they really like, whether it's boxing, whether it's mathematics, or whether it's cooking, whatever it may be. Find something that they love doing and then focus on that and be great. So I don't believe I've scratched the surface on being able to um, really get that part of what I believe I've been called to do. But I think that's coming after, um, the wrestling and after the Valor bare knuckle, and I get that stuff up and going. I think then I will be able to do more of what I believe that my calling is. And I truly believe, no matter what, that everybody here has been put on earth to help someone succeed in something. That's what we're here for. Everybody has an opportunity to help another individual become successful or become, um, you know, at least find the desire and the things that they want to do in life. I believe we all have that ability, right? So, yeah, it would be great if we could literally understand that, and that every person in the world would mentor or coach somebody into a life that they would be happy with. And so I believe that I have a lot more to do. I believe I'm just scratching the surface right now, because right now it's about entertaining people, having fun, enjoying life. But I think I have to build a foundation that allows me to be able to go out and help millions of people follow and achieve their goals.
Before I let you go, Ken, please let the people know where they can get your new book, written by J.E. Snowden, The World's Most Dangerous Man, and what can we expect from that book?
Well, I just want to say, we got a lot of stuff going on with Valor. I got my book coming out,
Right.
Shamrock book. It's getting a lot of good reviews. Jonathan Snowden did a terrific job on it. So if you get a chance, you got to read it, but it'll blow your mind. It's not one that I read and I'm comfortable with, but it's real. So it's a great book. So if you want to stay up with everything that we've got going on, go to kenshamrock.com. That's my website. Got all my social media sites on there. Go check it out. Follow up on what we're doing. And also, too, you'll be able to get my book on there, Shamrock book.
Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Take care, brother.